Good evening and welcome you all back to yet another Big Talk. This is Medil Krish speaking to you from Amrita Vishwavidyapidam, Ettimadai, Coimbatore. Before we start off with our Big Talk, it is a duty from my end to introduce my university to all of you who are joining me for the first time on this Big Talk. And Amrita Vishwavidyapidam, two things have happened in the last 2 months, couple of months, that we are the first or the best university in Asia as per the ranking of Times Higher Education. So among the private universities, we stand number one. So maybe it will be helpful for our speaker also. So we stand number one among the private universities across the world. We are the number one. That is number one information that I wish to share with you all. The number two information is as far as the NIRF ranking is concerned, National Institutional Ranking Framework by the MHRD. Our university has moved from the 8th position in 2019 to the 4th position in 2020. So we are the 4th best university as per the NIRF ranking in 2020. So these two good news I always share, right? Rest of it you can always go refer to our website and get further information. And one more thing before we commence, our remote proctor test is going on from yesterday, and that would be there till the 20th of August. So people who have not done the slot booking or has any problems in getting on to those particular new innovative, I would say, more than new innovative way of testing the AEEE 2020. And if you find any difficulty, please don't bother, right? We will get back to you with another suitable date. So don't panic because the technology is all advanced and sometimes you may somewhere or the other fail to get yourself into this particular test. So nothing to worry, get back to us. We'll always fix it another day because I find on the Telegram that many of you are finding a bit difficult to get into this remote proctor test. If you're not able to, no panic, nothing is lost. We will get back to you with yet another suitable date. So coming back to the business today on the Big Talk, we have, we have, in fact, a personality, right, whom I know for almost close to about 90s, 2000, almost close to 30 years. He's Mr. Hari Prakash, and how I know him is we had worked together in the number one company, that is MRF Tires. From 1991 to 2000 I worked, and he was already there. And in MRF as early as 1986 or 87, what he mentioned now. And not only that, he had, in fact, where he worked, I too worked in the same market. So just we were having a chat before we started this particular live. So he is Mr. Hari Prakash. We have lots and lots of information that we need to gather about the speaker. So instead of me reading out all those, one simple term, I would say that he's got 33 years plus of corporate experience and exposure in different capacities and in different fields. Right? So he worked for Tire, maybe he has worked for another company in tires, which he would say. Before we commence on the clarification, Mr. Hari, I would call you Hari, right? With respect, due respect. Yeah, Hari. Before we get on to this discussion, I just want to find out from you. You started off your actual career in 1986, or were you working prior to 1986? Over to you. Hari, welcome. Sorry, I didn't officially welcome you all. Welcome, Hari, for this big talk. And the topic that you're going to talk is about the hope to humanity, right? Hope to humanity. Is that what you're going to for corporate people? But then we'll talk about the hope and the humanity a little later. So welcome you on behalf of Amrita Vishwavidyapidam. We are indeed blessed and honored to be with you today for the next 45 to 50 minutes. Over to you, Mr. Hari.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Professor Medil Krish. Big talk, and you have a very small man in front of you. We address you as the master moderator these days. It's a pleasure to associate myself with Amrita Vishwavidyalaya, which has now emerged as a top university in the country. That's something incredible. for an university
Thank you, Hari.
which is in one corner of a country now emerging as a very, very big player in the education space. Just to answer your query about how my journey started, very few people know that I was a discarded cricketer who made a life in corporate. I was a wicket keeper for Andhra, and then a gentleman from MRF which started this cricket academy by name Mr. Ratnam and T.A. Shekhar, the Indian pace bowler. They saw me and then took me as their wicketkeeper just to gather the balls when fast bowlers bowled. I was not a good batsman. So for a few days I was there gathering all the balls behind the wickets. And then when they realized that a better wicketkeeper batsman came into the MRF team, they said this guy is not good enough for the cricket team, let him go to sales. So a cricket discard actually found a career in sales and marketing, and I would say there was no regrets at the end of 33, 34 years. Initially, I had a small stint before MRF with India Cements, again in the capacity as a cricketer. And then I moved to MRF. I had a fairly long innings in MRF, close to 1 decade, and then moved to RPG Group's Seat Tires. That was another big stint of 8 to 9 years. Then I was abroad for a consumer durable company, distribution company, which managed Philips and Samsung at Lagos. And I used to handle the West African market there. So when I came back, I took up an assignment with automobile giant Tata Motors in the passenger car division. And thankfully, I had that opportunity of working when Nano came into India. And with God's blessings, I had the opportunity of receiving in 3 years in succession from Sri Ratan Tata's hands, the best performer in terms of passenger car sales when I was based out of Chennai. Achievements will take you from place to place and you move on in life. All through this journey, I have learned a lot from colleagues, supervisors, team members, channel partners. And then eventually, when I took the last assignment with an US MNC called Valvoline Cummins, a Cummins Group company, where again I had a last 10 years there, I thought I should hang my boots and then come out and get active in academic world in whatever little way. What we do in corporate is basically we are only stuck in operations, and then probably you may not have that satisfaction of sharing whatever you have learned. And I found a good window through this connecting with universities. Now I am associated with Jain University, IIM Trichy. I go as visiting faculty for general marketing subjects, and I'm a happy man.
Wonderful, wonderful. So 33 years of exposure, and I never knew that you were behind the wickets before you joined India Cements. And I think from behind the wickets, you came forward, right? So now you are in front of the wickets, and you have faced many wickets in your life. The wicket number 1, India Cements, then to MRF Tires, then to Seat, then you went abroad, then you had a stint with Tata Motors, then the final was with Valvoline, right? Wonderful. That's a good journey, and I just want to how did you feel about shifting from one company to another, and how far it was easy for you to adjust to the new, working with MRF, then to Seat, then from there to selling cars. It's a different. Okay, I understand from tire to tire is the same, but then with a different brand. But from one field to another field, how did you manage to adjust? Because I find, most of those students who graduate from the business schools, they stay for 2 years in one particular company, they jump to another company, they're not able to set themselves very well because of, they're not able to adjust to the new environments, rules and regulations, SOPs, and they leave that company within 5 to 6 months and then join another company. So how did you manage 9 years, 10 years, 10 years? So I think when I looked at your profile, or when you read out your profile, I found every company like Seat 10 years, then you had Volvo in 10 years. I think 10 years is something which MRF almost 10 years. So 10 years is something, you know, your yardstick. Beyond that, let me jump out for your betterment. No issues at all. So can you give some tips to those students? Is it right to jump from one company to another? And if one jumps, how do you adjust to the new environment? Then we will talk about the big talk.
Yeah. In fact, it was this morning or yesterday morning, I was answering one research query from one of the LinkedIn market researcher, HR researcher, who said, what is the right time to move? And the slabs he put were 0 to 2 years, 2 to 4 years, 4 to 8 years, something like that, 3, 4. In fact, I saw which was the last biggest slab. I saw it about 10 years. Then I put about 10 years. But having said that, I look at individual's career close to 4 decades. If you really start your active life at early 20s and close at 60s, it's a good more than 3 decades or close to 4 decades. So if you have to really make an impact in an organization, you need to have a good grounding where you get operational efficiency in the first stint or the first and second stint, and then go to a level of supervisory positions. There also you need to have a good soaking. Again, that also could be whether it's 6 years or 8 years, it's only a matter of debate. But then you need to have that soaking period where you understand the nuances of that particular level and responsibility. Then the third probable stage is the leadership position, where also I think you need to actually prove in one organization that you have contributed and then performed to the expectations of the ownership or the leadership. All in all, I believe the required faculties that individual need to have is that flexibility and that adjustment. Basically, the adjustment is on the culture. Invariably, people like us who are originally from the south of India, you go to Bombay, it's a different culture. The companies are different, the language is different, and then you move to Delhi. It's an absolutely, vibrant culture there. You set yourself and then adjust. All that actually is a sort of a learning curve and a journey of learning in your entire career. You take it in that way, I suppose that every individual will understand that staying for some time, it's again in cricket language, you need to stay on the wicket to score some runs. If you start throwing your bat from ball 1, you may end up actually losing your wicket. So that staying time is probably the required quality that you need to.
So which means that you need to stay quiet for some time. I mean, don't try some stunts as an who come. There are some players who come and, immediately start hooking the ball, which sometimes, most of the times they get caught and they're out. So yes. Your advice is to, watch, right? I always say, use this, keep this closed. Keep your eyes and ears open, but keep your mouth shut. Till 6 months, when people will come to know you, you come to know about people. Fantastic. Thank you so much, Hari, for an interesting explanation as to how you should get yourself adjusted when you go to a new corporate world. So thank you so much. Now let us get on to the big talk. And as you all know, it is bringing hope to humanity. Hari, you'll agree with me that the current situation. I mean, everybody talks about COVID-19, all this. And if you really ask me as to what exactly is happening today across the world, not just in India, across the world, there's a gloomness or a gloominess, whatever you call it. There's a distress, there is a depression, there is a volatility, there is a confusion. Overall, I find the entire world have no clue as to what would happen tomorrow. Forget tomorrow, even what to happen this evening, late in the evening. So there is a confusion. Things are very gloomy these days. Under these circumstances, as an individual, Mr. Hari, how do you throw light? I meant to say real light. It's always, I would say, when you throw the light, that it must ignite. It must really burn. And we should all be able to see, yes, there is something. There's a light on the other side of the tunnel, people say, which is not seen at the moment. You think, Hari, you'll be able to do that? Can you do some sort of, the kickstart or igniting or starting so that we can see the light across the globe with a lot of hope first? Over to you. How do you want to tackle this of igniting the entire thing? Over to you.
Let me, in management schools, you're all professors will know, we keep talking about VUCA, volatile is a big term. Corona, after it has come and hit the world, I think VUCA, more than VUCA, I think the pandemic has taken over and there's gloom all over. But yet, let me try to get some background slides to explain this entire.
Yeah, please.
The theory of hope, or what we call as the belief in hope. I think the first thing, individuals and organizations, here we are talking in reference to corporates and organizations also. But the starting point is you need to believe that hope is a choice you make. When you decide that you have choice and then you pick it up from your basket of options that you have, I think you are on the right track first. As I know you keep getting a lot of WhatsApp images these days. Hope says, hold on, pain will end. Hold on, pain ends. So there is that belief in you, in individuals, which is actually by default said by the Almighty, that positivity and hope are there in your basket of options. And when you exercise that choice and go for it, I believe you have started the journey of actually defeating whatever challenges that come to humankind. In fact, many times, when we are talking about organizations and companies, and how can they give hope to humanity? Many people believe that corporate humanity is an oxymoron. I mean, these are two opposite. How can corporates, which are there to actually fleece and exploit human beings for their own profits, come in handy and then come in as a sort of a hope for humanity? Because several instances in history have actually shown that corporates have not behaved or addressed this issue of human concerns in the best possible way. In fact, as recently as 2010, when the big oil spill happened in Mexico, including the president of US, Barack Obama, shared a view of Christopher Ryan, who's a big thinker of US, and he said, no, corporates have got no human face at all. That's the way the entire world painted the corporate. When British Petroleum's chairman made a statement that we'll take the entire responsibility to undo the damage, we'll honor all legitimate claims, all those statements came. Sadly, the people said, BP, the British Petroleum Company, is neither we or they, but it is it. Which means organizations are considered to be inhuman. It stands for no humanity. But look at the positive side, Professor Krish. What are business corporations, companies? They are basically groups of human beings. I mean, a company does not speak, it does not think, it does not act. Basically, it's a group of sentient beings, people who think, who feel, and who enjoy meaningful relationships, friendships, and they also care for the entire world. So you need to have that particular belief that organizations, institutions, and my earlier slide, individuals per se, are by default having this particular feeling for hope or a belief in hope. I think that should sum it all. So let me stop here the slide part.
Fine. So you spoke, yeah, tell me.
Only one more sentence here.
Yeah, please.
Invariably, organizations actually have this particular meetings, discussions on no, we have to do for the society, and then it might probably stop at lip service, it might probably stop at a document, it might probably stop with 1 or 2 meetings. But then I think it requires, we will get into it a little later, it requires the leadership resolve to actually take this particular thought and a desire to be human in the DNA for the companies and organizations to actually rekindle hope.
Hari, whatever
Yes.
you say, I accept. You spoke about BP, all accepted. But if you really look at the corporates today and even a few years back, or from the time it has all begun, their focus is on the top line and the bottom line. See, they want to increase the sale, they want to grab the market share, they want to be the number one in that particular field of operation, whether it's lubes or tires or cars, whatever it is. Every company is eyeing to be on the top and also eyeing to increase their profit every quarter. I mean, everybody, you see, if you look at a CEO of a company, his ability to turn around the company is by, and his capacity is also judged by the percentage of increase in his profits, in the company's profit, quarter on quarter. First quarter, this much, this quarter, 20% up. So under these circumstances, do you mean to say that this corporates and the business people will be in a position to reduce the sufferings of humanity? Because humanity today are suffering, no doubt about it. There are people who have really lost their jobs. There are people, their salary is halved. There are people who have been asked to stay back and will be called when they are required. So there is a lot of suffering. And I understand, because I come from a educational institution, that there are parents who are rich enough to make the payment for their children's fees are now delaying because they haven't received the salary. So sufferings are on, and we appreciate, we accept the unnatural behavior of those parents who are unable to make those payment as fees because of their own problems. So we as an institution, we appreciate, and we can only say, oh my God, let him get back his job and let him put his money so that the child's education never stops. So that is what sufferings are all about from our side.
That's very humane. That's very humane.
Yeah. When you're looking at this, Hari, like these type of sufferings, and when the companies, the corporates are looking for their profits and turnover, how do you think that the companies and corporates will be able to get those sufferings down over a period of time? Is it possible? And if it is possible, how it is possible? Over to you, Hari.
Yeah. No, I mean, again, it would be a long explanation. I would try to get across. Look at it again from where I left. Organizations again are a bunch of people who have come together to actually make a product and sell to people. After all, if you look at the entire organization setup, it's all made by the people and for the people, which is the market that they are addressing. So in effect, I think I have a slide which might probably explain. Yes, look at this particular, the real role of a business is simply to produce good goods, services at a lowest possible cost and earn a possible fair profit for the entrepreneur. Possible fair profit. When business fulfills its role, it acts as in harmony with society. In a world, society favors harmonious exchange of scarce economic goods. So when you know that actually the business organizations exploit and take the natural resources that the world has to offer and do some processes and make products and offer these products and services, and they also provide employment. All in all, this cycle is actually helping human beings to be better in terms of living, their quality and their buying power. All these things are helped by organizations. In a way, a very well-oiled machine in this entire business cycle actually helps organizations to make money. They also in turn help employees get their salaries, they get their buying power. They offer goods at low, fair quality so that people also buy goods and services. Their quality of life is better when they keep consuming goods and services. And when you buy goods, you do servicing. There's again far more. So I mean, I'm only talking very general economy here. A general market economy, if everybody knows the limitations of what and how much they need to take as a pie from what the world has to offer. You know, I am tempted to quote none other than Mahatma Gandhi. This world has got enough for every man's need, but not every man's greed. So if business organizations also act very, very harmoniously in aligning with the world and the stakeholders in the world, I think problems don't arrive. Look at what COVID has done. I mean, I'm trying to answer your the question. COVID as a pandemic actually had an impact on first, the impact is on economy. If you look at the figure on the right, the economics of all the economies of all the countries, UK said it's 30% down, India maybe double-digit down. So this drop in the GDPs and the economy actually caused huge suffering. And there is this vulnerable class of have-nots, which will have the biggest suffering because they don't have the wealth and they depend on the income. People who depend on incomes are the ones who get hurt first. I want to show take the shift to the left side of the slide, which says UNO has identified what are the biggest humanitarian challenges. There are about 16, 17 are there, but let's not get into those subjects. But look at the top 10. In the top 10, there is poverty, there is zero hunger, there is good health and well-being, or reduced inequalities. And I have highlighted with a into mark the ones that got really badly beaten up by this COVID. Poverty is growing like mad. Health, in fact, it affected the health. Reduced inequalities. Actually, this pandemic has increased the inequalities. Decent work and economic growth, the 8th point. A lot of people have lost jobs, as you rightly said. And quality education, children are not able to go to school. The boys and girls in Bihar don't have internet connectivity to see the webinars or the online classes. See, look at education, health, and hunger as the biggest fallouts of this COVID and the economy downtown. So food, health, education are the ones that got really badly hit. But again, I'm going back to the businesses. Look at the organizations which are actually addressing these problems. Pharmaceutical companies, like whether it is Glaxo or Cadila or Pfizer, they are addressing the issue of health. Housing companies are addressing the problem of shelter. Companies, organizations like Amrita, Byju's are addressing the education issues. Apollo hospitals are all corporates. Unilever and Nestle are probably in the business of food. They are there. They're actually making food. They have solutions. And it's only a matter of resolve as to how your products can reach people, albeit at a lesser price in these difficult times. Because they are using the world reserves and they know that one stakeholder, the consumers, the world at large, is actually suffering. So probably I may have to give him a subsidy. Subsidy is a bad word in the current economy's what you call fashion world. But yes, these are the days of subsidy you need to probably look at as a corporate. Have I addressed that particular? There's every
absolutely,
chance
absolutely. It's very, very, very clear on whatever you mentioned on the last 2-3 slides. But I have some more. We need to talk about some leaderships. I mean, nothing happens unless the person who sits on the helm of affairs, who takes a call and then spreads that qualities of leadership across all the borders of a corporate. Now, I would say we all have studied from books and our own experiences. We also have been leaders. in different responsibility, taking up different responsibilities, and those qualities of a leader, I'm sure everyone knows about it. But Mr. Hari, like what I would like to know that today we need to have a different leader because the situation is totally different from what you see, what you would have seen 4 or 5 months back. So, what do you think a leader of today facing this COVID and giving hope to humanity as a leader should have quality like one, two, three, a different quality, decision makings and these impartiality, all those things are fantastic, fine, it works. But in today's context, Hari, what do you think are the two best quality that every leader must put into themselves in creating that hope to the universe, humanity? Over to you, Hari. And then the second would be that if you can also let us know that as to who do you think are those leaders it has come who have taken steps to giving those hope to humanity. Over to you, Mr. Hari.
The way I think as individuals we look at leadership is again very people in power, people in position. I believe leadership is a quality which every individual is blessed with. Almighty has actually pumped this leadership quality in everyone. Um, I was all of us are seeing this WhatsApp picture of a lady, a middle-aged lady in Bombay. When there's a big rain and the roads are over, she stood there with a stick, and a manhole was protected, and she manned the manhole for 7 hours and prevented people from falling into the pit. See, that's leadership. That's situation leadership. People rise to the occasion. People rise to the occasion when the challenges do come. In fact, leadership actually is a reaction. Many times, leaderships spring up when crises do come. Here I've put these pictures of whether it is Jack Ma or Angela Merkel or Ambani's or Chandrasekhar or Bill Gates. All these people wield power, and they have that particular what you call in Hindi the key to actually open up vistions of hope for the humanity. Because it's not just government, corporations. I mean, again, I'm trying to get back to the subject of how corporates and organizations can be a harbinger of hope. An organization of Microsoft's stature, which actually gets so many what you call dollars as net profits every year. I mean, maybe better than some of the GDPs of smaller economies. Actually, can make the entire company or a country turn its tables. So, I mean, the leaders are just not political, business, banks. Everybody has got the power to bring that change, albeit in their own doses, in their own capacities. The bigger thing I'm answering your question is, I think, what are the qualities? I'm tempted to play this particular leadership video. Why I call it as leadership video is the market research company Gallup did a survey in 2002, which is probably one of the biggest survey to find out. It's a leadership survey. Who is the biggest leader of this particular century, 20th century? And it was not Abraham Lincoln or Ayakokas or Sony's chief executive or anybody. It was none other than this lady. And this lady's video probably just, I'll just play a clip of what she spoke when she took that Nobel Prize from President Ronald Reagan. Just for you.
Hari,
yeah,
audio is closed.
One minute. I'll just let me just. Let me just. Enable audio. Is the function here in Teams. Okay.
some adjustment on your.
Now you will be able to see it. Is it okay?
I'm yet to see the video.
Is it?
Video is missing on the screen.
Okay. Are you able to see the screen?
Now something, yeah. Now the screen, but not the full screen. Now the full screen, yes.
There is a Hindu family with 8 children, have not eaten for a long time. Do something for them. And I took rice and I went immediately. And there was this mother, those little ones' faces, shining eyes from sheer hunger. She took the rice from my hands. She divided into 2 and she went out. When she came back, I asked her, where did you go? What did you do? And one answer she gave me, they are hungry also. She knew that the next door neighbor, a Muslim family, was hungry. What surprised me most, not that she gave the rice, but what surprised me most, that in her suffering, in her hunger, she knew that somebody else was hungry. And she had the courage to share. And she had the love to share. And this is what I'm.
So this is the small video about
Wonderful,
great
wonderful.
leader, great leader. So I'm coming back to your question of what is the quality. The quality of a leader displayed there is a quality of compassion, quality of caring. In corporate parlance, this compassion and sharing comes because there are these conflicting stakeholders. One is an investor, one is a customer, one is an employee. You need to balance out, and then, okay, you have this rice. What we have is 4 stakeholders. The worst suffering stakeholder is probably the employees. You give them more this time. The worst suffering stakeholder is probably the consumer. Give them more this time. So you may have to have that situational flexibility which a leader needs to display. So compassion, flexibility, and that understanding of the ground reality are the probable this thing. I also want to take another 2 minutes of showing another great leader, Mahatma Gandhi's. He was not a businessman, but he was a Gujarati, mind you. And there's no way you can take business out of him. And when he was asked to address business leaders when he came back from his barrister days, he went fairly prepared with the subject. And they asked him, what is that you can do, I can do as a businessman? And who are all there in that particular meeting? G.D. Birla, Jamshedji Tata, all this, Jamnalal Bajaj, all these people were there. He said, care, look at people and the suffering, and all your products should be actually meeting these requirements of the masses, and they should be at a price which is reasonable. And if you actually see, Professor Krish, products of these organizations of Bajaj or Birlas or Tatas, even today, their children and grandchildren are actually following those learnings of, I won't say Gandhian teachings, but then that care and compassion is very much there in Tata Enterprise or Birla Enterprise. They may be a little more religiously inclined, but Bajaj, all these people have displayed immense compassion when it comes to taking care of employees, not throwing employees out, not treating the suppliers badly. That is probably the leadership that we are talking about.
Absolutely. Now, well, I am indeed delighted to hear from you about 2 people whom I adore and respect and salute them because they are the two role models of mine. One is Mother Teresa and the other person is Mahatma Gandhi. So you took both their names as far as the leadership is concerned. Thank you so much, Hari, for bringing them back. That
My pleasure.
people should know who they are and why are they, what for they lived. And wonderful. I really appreciate you for that. You also,
in fact, I will take another minute of saying
please,
that.
please go ahead. It's your
So there was some discussion in Harvard, which talked about. I mean, it's there in print in HBR. The management students can see. If Mahatma Gandhi and Mother Teresa were alive, what will be their opinion on electric cars? What will be their opinion on e-commerce? They said no, they would have probably asked Teslas, and they would have probably asked Amazons, take care of the smaller suppliers, Amazon case, and take care of the drivers who might lose their job. You know, that is the perspective of care and compassion they would have probably brought into.
So yeah, I agree with you. They all live for the masses. I mean, whatever they have done is for the entire masses. It's not just to a particular group of people. So I think I really agree with you on whatever you mentioned today. That there is something called a Gandhian engineering. I don't know whether you heard.
Yes.
You have heard about.
Yes, I heard it. Yeah.
Gandhian. It's you make something for the society so that many number of people can use that. It's not if you make like an Audi, a 7 Series, 8 Series, that can be used only by those elite and affluent people. But then if you can bring in a car that the 80% of those masses can use it, that's like nano. I mean, why should we go to Mahatma Gandhi on Gandhian engineering? I mean, he brought in a car for ₹1,00,000, and today people can't afford to buy those medium-sized and those bigger size cars. They can go in for a nano. So when you invent, when you develop something new, let it for the entire society. Let many use those. That's what is the Gandhian engineering is all about. And rightly you stuck it on the point. Very good. And I'm very happy, Hari, that you brought in and quite an interesting discussion on this. But I'm coming back to three important letter, CSR, corporate social responsibility. It's been going on for years now that a portion of your profit has to be kept aside for the social development around you or across the country. So that many big companies do based on their potential, and smaller companies also utilize the CSR. But that isn't enough today. That isn't enough today. Just doing the same what we were doing about 6 months back or in 2019 will not suffice. We need to move a little more ahead, not little more ahead, little farther in terms of bringing something unique. It can be called whatever name you want to call, Hari, you can call. But what is your suggestion that the company just continue with your CSR activity? No problem, no difficulties. We are not stopping that. But beyond that, to face this pandemic, the COVID-19, what a corporate can do beyond CSR. Over to you, Hari.
I think I think CSR is a what you call push down the throat social initiative by the legislation. It's like saying that I think the current law is saying that 2% of I don't know last 2 years or last 3 years of your net profits you need to put it back, and
2%.
2% is what they're saying. But I think that's something. If you have a BSE 500 companies, there will be 350 companies who would have defaulted. With humility, I should say that in one of the organizations where I was working, they said, no, let's do CSR for our customers. CSR is not for customers and business development. CSR is for the society, and you should feel for the cause that you want to do. I mean, just imagine we were talking about paint industry. If you are doing CSR work for the what is that, architects, that's not really CSR. You are actually hoodwinking the entire system of CSR expenditure and want to develop customer relationship. Promotion. It's basically it's a hoodwinked promotion, which is not in the true spirit. See, you will have to do it in the spirit and law of CSR. Then personally, I will not have any discomfort if somebody does it with that spirit. But I want to bring here three individuals. I hope the slide is on the screen.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
See, when you say CSR and when you say Tata companies, or when you say Ajim Premji's organizations and their foundations, they are not bothered about what government of India has actually given as a legislation, 2% and all that. They actually feel for the causes that they have taken up. Look at the amounts that Ajim Premji has put to his foundations from the, and I don't want to mention the organizations that are equally big like Wipro, but nowhere near there. Or for that matter, you know, the dynamic Alibaba Group's chairman Jack Ma. The way the service is done to the stakeholders by the Alibaba Group is unimaginable. Of course, we are not privy to the quality of work, but that's actually CSR from the heart. Thankfully, this particular CSR probably by force has started companies to think on those lines, and over a period of time, it's like, you know, bringing uniform culture to the children. You start implementing it by force first, and then slowly it gets into the system. But I think compassion, care, and caring for humanity actually should come from the heart. That's a point. I wanted to also show you the CSR legislation, and then the top companies that are there on the left: Tata Chemicals, Infosys, Bharat Petroleum. They're doing a fairly good investment on the causes that they are. But look at the chart on the right side. The 20 top profit generators in India, their particular profits would be what? Probably 3-4% of our GDP. They do about 5 lakh crore rupee profit. But you need to have that intent and that feel. You'll see that top companies, public sectors to private to MNCs, all there on that list. They may not be the ones which are actually doing with that intent and care. But having said that, it's not fair for me to comment on individual companies. But then the trend is slowly catching up, and bigger challenges like this COVID actually pushes people to think and actually give and take with the society. Actually, probably will probably come in. I also want to show this particular slide, Professor Krish.
Yeah, please.
The government of India spends about 67,000 crores on health, education about 100k crore, and social welfare about. So all in all, it's about 2 lakh crore is what these three what you call departments take out of our union budget of 30 lakh crore. Look at the impact that COVID had on these three sectors: health, education, and social welfare. I mean, we agreed in the beginning that these are the critical areas where corporates have to come in handy. When the union government budget is only 2 lakh crore, and corporate India earns more than 5 lakh crore as profitability, as profits, these BSE 500 companies. I mean, there can be 1 year of sacrifice or sharing of 20%, 30%. Another 1 lakh crore or 1.5 lakh crore from the corporate can do wonders to this particular ministries of health, education, and social welfare. That's it. My limited point is there is a huge scope and a deep pocket, deep pockets that are lying there. It's just that intent and the leadership resolve that would probably tilt the scales in favor of humanity.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Well said, Mr. Hari. And I also like to add that it's not just the corporates. Most of the universities and most of the colleges have converted their hostels into COVID beds in case of emergency, right? They could use. In fact, our hostel in Amritapuri, our headquarters, we have kept things ready there in case the government wants to utilize it. This is also yet another way of social responsibility, which we have taken from our side. So we are ready with beds.
Incredible. Hats off.
So most of those colleges, because I don't know when the colleges will restart. I mean, nobody knows about it. So it could be 4 months or 5 months. It could be in 2021. So nobody is clear about what's going to happen in terms of reopening the educational institutions. Having said this, Mr. Hari, if you look at India, we are at the moment young India. We have close to about 50% of our population below 25 years. And the average age of an Indian is around 29 compared to Japan, it is around 47, and China would be around 39. So we are facing a young India. Our population is all young, right? I'm 62, you are 54, 55. So we have become old, but it's still an young India. And under these circumstances, it is not enough to close this session by only talking about the corporates, right? We also should try and inform those young Indians as to what they could do in these tough times facing COVID, and how could they also create that hope in the minds of the humanity. So children can do a better job, I feel. I mean, they have better imagination, they have better creativity, they have better innovation. The thoughts are all fresh. Like, my brain has gone through 62 years, your brain has gone through 42 years. Maybe I'm slightly in terms of this. You have done a fairly good job that is seen on your head. Mine is all gone. So now we need to advise, we need to guide, we need to direct those young Indians who would be facing this year after year in the future. What are your takeaways from this, and what are your guidelines that you can give to those young Indians who are below 25 years and 50% of our 1.36 billion population is actually below 25? And I want you to tell them as to what they could do, especially to create that hope in the mind of human beings. Over to you, Mr. Hari.
Yeah, with no offense to corporate professionals and business development executives, corporate professionals actually have got very, very narrow-minded approach to the entire life.
How long did you work in a corporate? 33 years, right?
33
years. I'll come back and see you later.
Yeah.
Go.
That's good enough to actually mess up your thinking faculties. Children are gifts of God. Invariably, they have uncorrupted, undiluted, and very, very large-hearted approach to life. Sharing comes naturally for them. Whereas all these business principles that corporate world teaches young men, deliver your goals, deliver your sales, get your promotions, get your career growth. All these things actually limit individuals to think about self-development and self-progress, wealth accumulation for self. Whilst children are much more amenable to compassion, and if those inputs were given at right time and appreciations happen, I think I have. Let me try to. Yes, I think I told about that particular picture of that woman who helped the traffic in Mumbai. You'll see there, and I think the line I used is, we need to appreciate and promote compassion as a value. I think compassion as a value for children, commercial organizations also through their commercials, through their what you call product promotions. I think these days they are doing a fair attempt at it. Look at this particular initiative of Nestlé's.
You're going to show the video now, right?
Yeah. Is it there?
Yeah, no, it's not there. No, it hasn't come yet.
Is it there?
I don't know whether till you get that video. Day for yesterday in Tirunelveli, that is in Nellai district. I think I sent you those video where some assistant sub-inspector or sub-inspector. Okay, over to you.
Yeah. I saw that particular video where the collector came down and
absolutely. I mean,
That's leadership. That's leadership, and that's appreciation.
Correct, correct.
नमस्ते दादी, कैसी हो?
हाँ ठीक ही हूँ।
आज तो एकदम फ्रेश सब्जी मिली है। और घर में सब ठीक?
आप जैसे लोग हैं ना मदद करने के लिए।
कुछ और चाहिए तो बताना। चलिए।
सुनो, पैसे कितने हुए?
अरे दादी, हम तो आपके बच्चे हैं। अच्छा, चलता हूँ दादी।
जब किसी और की जिंदगी को छू जाएंगी, तेरी अच्छाइयाँ दूर तक जाएंगी।
अरे हम भी तो आप बच्चे हैं ना।
तेरी अच्छाइयाँ दूर तक।
जब आप 2 मिनट ठहर कर किसी के लिए कुछ करते हैं तो देश की उम्मीदों में नए रंग भरते हैं। मैगी में हम भी इस साल करेंगे अपनी तरह से कुछ छोटी कोशिशें। आइए आप भी इस तरह से दीजिए 2 मिनट देश के लिए।
From Nestle.
You look at the appreciation. Look at the appreciation of the grandmother. See, that's actually appreciating the value of compassion. A child who is watching this commercial, I'm sure will have, those antennas coming up. Let me also try doing it to the people around me. See, these values are to be actually appreciated when children display this. I always, again, being a marketing man, I look at television commercials as, means of great education for children and instilling of values. It does a lot. There is one for Surf Excel's ad. I don't know whether it's a Pakistani ad or a Sri Lankan ad, and it shows how your clothes can get dirty, but then you need to help that old man who's making those samosas that's I think this is the one. Let me just see if it is that particular. This is a Sri Lankan ad.
Oh, Sri Lankan ad. Okay.
හොඳ වෙලාවට පුතාට හොඳ අදහසක් ඉක්මනටම ආවා. ඔයාට මේ පැලයි යවන්නත් හොඳ වෙලාවක්.
නේ අම්මේ සර්ෆ් එක්සෙල් තියනවනේ. සර්ෆ් එක්සෙල්. තද ඉඳුල් පැල්ලන් යවන්න උනත් වෙලාවෙන් භාගෙරි.
Neither you know the language now, right?
Sinhalese.
Look at Sri Lankan Sinhalese language. You look at the way the mother comes and just ruffles the hair and appreciates the child who makes his the clothes dirty, but all for a good cause of helping the old lady who dropped the fruits. See, that's appreciating that particular value. Young India, if they are exposed to these gestures and prompts, that's enough. They'll take your country to a situation where compassion will be in oversupply. Believe me, it will be in oversupply.
Absolutely, absolutely. So it's a learning for the young Indians, right? And I would thank you so much for that explanation, and keep watching advertisement. Don't look at as an advertisement, but it carries a lot of message for the youngsters, and especially companies like Nestle and Unilever have done a wonderful job in bringing this. And Amul also has a better stake on Amul.
They have done well. And for all the student community, I would suggest that they see this particular interview of Suresh Narayan, who is the CMD of Nestle.
Nestle.
And his thoughts, that's leadership of compassion.
Absolutely. Yeah. Can I take one question from, there is a question, not a question, I want you to say your thoughts on that. He has written that I feel that people who are crushed in any corporate company is the middle people, right, or an average people, because higher up does not know about it, as these handful people who are managing them does not give them correct idea about it. So what he's trying, and the question is, in such a case, where should a person go and whom to speak? Right. They're talking about, were you heading the marketing of Volvo?
Yeah.
He's talking about he's talking about you, that people below get crushed because of this. And if they get crushed, where do they go? Because top people do not understand the realities. What he tries to say is that you all sit in the AC room and keep watching sales taking up. You start bombarding people below you and say, hey, get me sales, do this, do that. But only when you get onto the realities, the real market, and see what is happening there, you will understand, which he says the top brass do not do that. Under these circumstances, when those area sales managers or the branch managers or those senior managers get crushed, where will they go, Hari? Come on, have a heart. Over to you.
It's a very, very pertinent question, and most middle-level management personnel feel this, that neither I have the liberty to shout from below, nor I have the authority to decide. But then have a heart for the people below you and people above you also. The guy above you puts a poster in his cabin, says the buck stops here. Whether he means it or not, it's a different matter. The buck actually stops there. And that's where leadership's quality can be assessed. When they put a poster, the buck stops here, they should actually walk the talk. And then, again, to look at this entire issue from the point of view of the middle-level managers, look at it from the positive side. It's only the middle-level manager who can reach both sides of the spectrum. He can reach the top and communicate what the bottom of the pyramid wants to convey. He can go back to the bottom of the pyramid and say, this is the organization's compulsions. Whereas the guy on top or the guy at the bottom of the pyramid does not have this particular luxury of actually stretching the hands and even communicating. So that leaves with a opportunity that a middle level manager has, that he's approachable. It's only a matter of communication and intent as to what you want to do as an individual to change the difficult situation that you are in or the organization is in. Always look from the perspective of what is that you can do. I mean, I'm always impressed by that particular circle of control, circle of influence, and there is a huge scope for the person who is in the middle, that he can influence both sides of the spectrum. That is something probably as individuals and middle-level managers need to see. And then, yes, if the top guy needs a rap on his knees, you should do it in a way he doesn't feel, but he gets the message. And if you want to convey a message strongly to the bottom of the pyramid, you should do it in such a way that he understands the need for that particular act or the action to be done.
Sir, well said. And I always feel that whether you're a middle or a senior level manager, look at the company's interest. If by some decisions or some plans things go haywire for the company, I think it's a company's interest which has to come, not the individual's interest. So as Hari was saying, that you can certainly put it across to your bosses, and bosses are also human beings. In fact, I also had a marketing department, and we are all human beings. Sometimes we go wrong, and we always stand to be corrected. And I always, in fact, as a person, as an individual, when I was heading a marketing team, I always listen to my subordinates, because okay, there could be 1 out of 100 or 2 out of 100 who would be bossing around. Leaders don't boss around. Leaders will listen to the subordinates, because he expressed, since he feels that bosses will never listen. Right? Boss is always right. Boss need not be always right. Absolutely. Bosses are human beings. They also can tend to make mistakes.
And thankfully these days, the younger managers who are leaders now, younger leaders are much more what you call accommodative.
Absolutely.
We were remembering our old bosses who and it was not easy to get into their cabins also. Forget about giving a suggestion or anything. But these are the days where there is a very, very participative and a very understanding process. Leadership. Yeah.
Absolutely. One of those viewers have mentioned that humanity is of zero value when it comes to professional level, especially in metropolitan city. bigger is the city, smaller is the heart of people. To some extent, I agree to what you say. Agreed, absolutely. But
absolutely.
Yeah, I know. You have worked in Delhi, you have worked in Chennai, you have worked in Bombay. So I also feel that, because they're like machines.
It's a dog eat dog world.
Absolutely. A place like, Bombay, and it's like you all seen Bombay, how they live. And they may not know who is their neighbor. I mean, to be very honest with you. And people go all the way to Pune to work, come back from Pune. So it's sort of a very tough life. And sometimes, as he rightly said, that feel of humanitarianism is not felt in cities. But if you're staying in maybe a little, semi-urban or in rural town, if you go to villages, how they take care of you, that's totally different. So I agree with you. And this has to be informed to the metropolitan people that they have to change and mend their ways on giving hopes to humanity. I'm thankful to Gurumurthy, KG Gurumurthy, who is from Central Library of Amrita Vishwavidyapeetham, Coimbatore, and he has especially mentioned to you, Hari sir. Thank you very much for your wonderful presentation. So on behalf of Gurumurthy, I am conveying his message, Hari. He appreciates. He's a librarian. He handles. It's a huge Central Library of Amrita Vishwavidyapeetham. So any librarian keeps reading books. So your presentation on leadership was wonderful, and he has especially intimated that in the chat box, and I personally convey that to you, Hari. Now, all that begins have to end well, Mr. Hari, and it's time for us to wind up and say goodbye, and a big thank you to the big talk of Mr. Hari on a very specific talk of bringing hope to humanity. And I'm sure with this talk being heard by many and will be viewed by many, and this will go into the YouTube of Amrita Vishwavidyapeetham, and people who have missed it can always see it later at a later stage. So on behalf of Amrita Vishwavidyapeetham, Mr. Hari, very special thanks to you and your family for sparing your time, and for your family for allowing you to spare your time for this big talk.
Thank you so much. It was my pleasure all the way. Thank you so much.
So this is Medal Krish signing off from Amrita Vishwavidyapeetham, Ettimadai, Coimbatore. So till we meet again, good day, goodbye, stay safe, stay secured. Jai Hind. Thank you.